Did you know that the average career length of an NFL running back is not even 3 years? Well, when it comes to fantasy football, it makes it really hard to plan for the future when you may only have a very short window of time with your running backs. For every Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, you're going to have a Todd Gurley, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, guys that absolutely had some big seasons but disappeared really fast. So today, let's jump into my top 24 running back rankings over the next 2 to 3 years. Perfect for those of you that are in keeper or dynasty leagues. But if you play redraft leagues and you're just wondering where some of these guys might end up, this content is for you as well. Plus, I'm going to throw in my top 18 tight ends to go with it. I think you could argue back and forth Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. And if you said Gibbs should be at number 1 and Robinson should be at number 2, I wouldn't argue against that. I wouldn't argue against Robinson and Gibbs either. More than likely, everybody's rankings in dynasty or keeper leagues are going to have these two guys at the very top. They're young, they're explosive, they still have a ton of potential left over the course of the next several years. Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to be household names for a while. I've got James Cook at number 3. He just got a big deal from the Buffalo Bills. He's only 25 years old. He's got one of, if not the best quarterback in Josh Allen, and they're going to be moving into a new stadium, which may actually help with some of the weather conditions they have faced there in Buffalo. James Cook really has only kind of broken out over the last couple of years and became a true workhorse, so I still think he's got tons of time left. Ashton Genty's rookie year was not great, and I'm pretty sure it was nowhere near what a lot of people expected and hoped for. They're going to have to make a lot of changes to the offensive line and get a lot better there. But if they do use their first overall pick on Fernando Mendoza, at least we know they're going to be adding a quarterback to the mix that will be solid. I still don't think Mendoza is going to be an all-world quarterback, but I definitely think he's going to be very good. It feels like Jonathan Taylor is basically a 10-year veteran at this point, but he's still only 26 years old. That's absolutely crazy. He's well on the right side of 30 still and could give you another couple of years of potential high output performances. The one thing that we're always worried about Jonathan Taylor is injuries. He was healthy last year. Let's hope it still doesn't continue to be an every other year thing. I've got Devon Achane at number 6. He is showing some elite playmaking ability, which was never questioned coming out of college. It was, however, can he stay healthy and handle an NFL workload as an undersized back? And so far, so good. The biggest question is what will the offense look like since Mike McDaniels is no longer there? Will Achane still be the explosive playmaker that he was? As long as he stays healthy, there's a good chance he can still be inside the top 10. And number 7, Omarion Hampton, and we only got really a brief glimpse of what he could do this past season, but the explosive playmaking ability absolutely will be there. Even though the offensive line dealt with a ton of injuries this year, as long as they're healthy going into 2026, they should be one of the better units in all of football. Health will be the main key for them. And with the changes they've made to the offensive staff, Omarion Hampton could end up going through the roof. At number 8, Chase Brown, and after a really terrible start to the season, he finished very strong. A big part of that was Joe Flacco coming in and playing at such a high level, and Joe Burrow returning well before anybody thought he was going to be able to make it back. I feel like Chase Brown is going to be a guy that over the next couple of years could continue to finish inside the top 10. The biggest question mark will be, does he get paid? Because after a couple of pretty good back-to-back seasons, Chase Brown is going to be up for a contract very soon. At number 9, Breece Hall, and Breece Hall is a free agent this offseason, so a lot of this ranking is going to depend on where he lands. The situation in New York was not great by any means, and we saw some explosive playmaking ability from him, but he was really inconsistent as well. If he lands in the right situation, say the Kansas City Chiefs, Breece Hall could go all the way up to the top 5, maybe even higher. And number 10, Saquon Barkley, a big down year this year, mostly because of the workload that he had the year prior. Towards the end of the year, things really picked up for him, and he was a top 10 running back towards the end of the season. But for a majority of the year, you had no idea if you were going to get a big performance or a letdown performance. And if that's something that continues over the course of his career in Philadelphia, it's going to make it really difficult for him to be a top tier fantasy option every single season. Also, at this point, Barkley is 28 years old, and with the type of workload that he has had over the course of his career so far, you gotta wonder if he's going to be Derrick Henry, playing well into his 30s, or if he's going to be more like Todd Gurley, where he disappears after some huge years. At number 11, Bucky Irving, another undersized running back that would have some concerns about potential injuries, and unfortunately, this past year, he dealt with that. As a rookie, he completely unseated Rachaad White and showed some huge breakout promise. And then this past year, even though he got off to a solid start, he got hurt, came back strong, and then disappeared. It sounds like they're making some changes on the offensive side of the ball with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and hopefully that means Bucky Irving becomes a mainstay in that backfield and in our fantasy lineups. At number 12, Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey is 29 years old, and has dealt with significant injury issues over the course of his career, where he has missed big chunks of season. We know that when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, that he's an elite running back. Heck, this past season, if you look at his running stats, he wasn't really good running the ball on the ground, but he was elite because of what they do with him in the passing game. And for that reason alone, I gotta leave him at number 12. Because even if he's not the type of running back on the ground that he used to be, if he stays in San Francisco with Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan also remaining in those roles, we could see Christian McCaffrey still be a huge receiving threat over the course of the next couple of years. And number 13, Kenneth Walker, and what he's doing in the playoffs right now without Zach Charbonnet is going to earn him a massive contract. But is it in Seattle or is it going to be elsewhere? Because Zach Charbonnet is likely going to miss a majority of the 2026 season. So does that mean Seattle spins and brings back Kenneth Walker and keeps him as their main running back and then finds somebody else to back him up? If that happens, are we going to have to worry about the type of time split that we saw this past season? Because when you watch Kenneth Walker in the playoffs, it is really hard to figure out how he didn't get more carries than what he did, because they would just completely abandon Kenneth Walker at some points. If he stays in Seattle, I think he's probably going to be right here around 13 for me. But if he lands in a really good spot, just watch him in the Super Bowl. That's the reason why he could go higher. At number 14, TreVeyon Henderson, and this ranking might seem aggressive. Keep in mind that I'm the one that tried to cool everybody on TreVeyon Henderson after he was drafted because of the contract Rhamondre Stevenson ended up getting. And Rhamondre Stevenson was the guy still this season. And even in their AFC Championship game, look how many carries Rhamondre Stevenson got compared to TreVeyon Henderson. He was clearly the lead back and clearly more trusted in the backfield than Henderson. Henderson showcases elite upside and elite playmaking ability, but it's strange to see the Pats basically look at him this season and say, you're nothing more than a timeshare guy. And even when Stevenson was fumbling the ball like crazy to start the season still, Henderson was not getting the touches we thought that he would. So we have to be very cautious with TreVeyon Henderson. The contract for Rhamondre Stevenson, New England can start getting out from under that over the next year or so, which means TreVeyon Henderson in the next 2 years could become the lead back in a Mike Vrabel offense. That I'm willing to buy into. At number 15, Quinshon Judkins, and I'm not entirely sure when he will return for the 2026 season. Suffered a broken knee at the end of the year, and it's going to take some time for him to get back. So 2026 may not be his best year as he works his way back from that. But after that, Quinshon Judkins absolutely could become a top 15 option on a regular basis. It will be interesting to see what Cleveland decides to do at the quarterback position and if Todd Monken will be the guy to unlock this offense. Josh Jacobs is 27 years old, and honestly, he probably should be a little bit higher than number 16. But I have some concerns about what we might see out of this backfield in the coming years, because when you look at a guy like Emmanuel Wilson and how well he ran the football this past year, why wouldn't you start to give him a few more touches? Why wouldn't you start to replicate a little bit more of what Detroit does, where they utilize Gibbs and Montgomery? Josh Jacobs could end up being the 1A, but if Emmanuel Wilson is the 1B, Jacobs is going to lose some much needed volume. And for a guy that really needs touchdowns to help prop him inside the top 12, if he loses any of those touchdowns, he might be a little further down. There is a little bit of a caveat to this as well. Jacobs still has 2 years remaining on his contract, but next year to get out from underneath it, it's only going to cost him about $3 million, and you just paid Micah Parsons a crap load of money. If at any point in time the Packers feel like they need a little financial stability and Emmanuel Wilson is running the ball as well as he did this past season, Josh Jacobs and his contract could become a casualty. At number 17, I'm going with Kyle Monangai. The way that he ran the football in this Ben Johnson offense the past year really showcased a ton of playmaking ability for the former Rutgers running back. And DeAndre Swift is going into his final year in the Chicago contract, and I cannot imagine that they are going to sign him to any type of an extension. Swift is probably going to slowly start to lose his workload to Kyle Monangai. This season, if the Bears decide to keep DeAndre Swift, we're going to see a 1A, 1B situation. But at some point in time, Swift is going to go from the 1A to the 1B. And then at some point, he's going to go to the number 2. It is interesting to note that if they decided to this offseason, they could get out from underneath of his deal for only $1.3 million. At number 18, RJ Harvey, who this year had a nose for the end zone. Double-digit touchdowns in his rookie year is nothing to scoff at. Now, I will say he wasn't nearly as good on the ground as what we would have liked, but J.K. Dobbins was so good to begin the season, RJ Harvey was not really needed right away. RJ Harvey is going to end up being the lead back in this backfield sooner rather than later. And when that happens, if he continues to find the end zone like he did, he's going to find himself with top 12 potential every week. At number 19, Kyren Williams. He did just get a brand new deal from the Los Angeles Rams this offseason, but that doesn't mean that he will see the end of the deal in LA. Blake Corum was very good right behind Kyren Williams. And if you take a look at the Kyren Williams contract, you gotta wonder if LA feels like it's worth it now. He technically has 3 years left on the deal, but they have a very easy out after 2 years. But the dead cap is going to be around $10 million if they decide that they need to move on before that. And you got to wonder, with Matthew Stafford being towards the end of his career and potentially having to replace a quarterback, if you take a look at other guys around him that they're going to need to bring back, do they bring Devontae Adams back for longer? Puka Nacua is going to need a new contract. With all of those things being said, at some point in time, they might feel like Kyren Williams is not worth keeping around. Derrick Henry is now 32 years old, and he is still a very solid running back. But I think we're getting to the point where we're going to see Derrick Henry start to trend a little bit more and a little bit more down. And when you're talking about a 32-year-old in terms of ranking players over the next 2 to 3 years, he clearly is going to be on the lower end of things. I love Derrick Henry, and by the time this is all said and done, he may go down as one of the greatest running backs of all time. But he's got 2 years left in Baltimore as of right now. This season, they're definitely not going to be cutting him because it's going to cost over $20 million to do that. But next season, they could do it for under 15. And again, if they find themselves in a situation where they need money in cap space, Derrick Henry at 33 years old next year could be looking for a new team. At number 21, Cam Skattebo, and the biggest question mark is new coaching staff coming in. Do they love him as much as the old coaching staff did? We know Jackson Dart and Skattebo are big fans of each other, so those two, they could end up working out just fine. But Skattebo has never struck me as a guy that's going to be a full workload NFL running back. He just runs too hard. He takes way too much contact, and because of that, it could end up shortening his career. So it's hard for me to bank on him for a long period of time. At number 22, Travis Etienne Jr., another running back that is going to be hitting free agency and looking for a new team. Does Jacksonville try to retain him? Does he end up going elsewhere? This Jacksonville coaching staff, which was new last season, drafted Bishal Tutin. So you gotta wonder if Tutin is going to be their guy, and if so, there's no reason to pay Travis Etienne. So where would he land? At number 23, Trey Benson. I expect him back and fully healthy next season, and hopefully he stays fully healthy for the entire year, because if he does, as the lead running back, he easily could be inside the top 24. And number 24, Jaylen Warren. New coaching staff. Is Mike McCarthy going to want to utilize Jaylen Warren the same way the old coaching staff did? Who's going to be the quarterback next season? Does Kenneth Gainwell come back for another year? Does Caleb Johnson, who they drafted out of Iowa last year, finally start to show up? Or is he just going to be one of those disappointments that doesn't make it in the NFL? There's a lot of question marks here, but Warren is young enough, just got a new contract, and has played well enough. I think he deserved to be inside the top 24. Now, here's a few guys that are on the outside looking in, and I'm just going to touch on these guys super quick. The first one being Zach Charbonnet. Already mentioned him with Kenneth Walker. We don't know when Charbonnet may be back next season, coming back from an ACL tear. But if Kenneth Walker walks in free agency, no pun intended, then Zach Charbonnet, when he does come back and have the backfield to himself, starting in 2027, he could be a really solid option. Byshell Tootin. I brought him up when I talked about Travis Etienne Jr. If Travis Etienne walks in free agency, then Tootin is absolutely going to be inside the top 24. But until Etienne is gone, we can't quite bank on that. Woody Marks. Did the Houston Texans see enough from him to make him the lead back next season and move on from Nick Chubb? I believe they probably did, but here's the crazy stat. During the regular season, Woody Marks left every single game early with an injury. That's going to be a big question mark. Blake Corum. As of right now, I can't quite slide him into the top 24, and that has to do because some of the guys that are going to be free agents could land in really good spots. But if they don't, and Blake Corum continues to put up similar numbers than he did last season, plus maybe a couple of more touchdowns, plus the fact that maybe Kyron Williams maybe only has a year left in Los Angeles if they decide to get out from underneath that deal, he could get inside the top 24 really fast. Chuba Hubbard. Does Rico Dowdle come back on a one-year deal? Probably not. He's going to be looking for a long-term deal. He made it known that he was not happy when Chuba Hubbard came back, that essentially they went back to Hubbard more than what they did with Dowdle at times. He wanted to be the lead back for the entire season, and he put up some really good numbers. He's off more than likely in free agency, but will Chuba Hubbard be used the same? And last but not least, give me David Montgomery here on the outside looking in. Let's see what Detroit ends up doing with him. Do they keep him for another year? If they do, can Petzing get him going more than they did last season? If they don't, he's going to be a total bust once again. But I can't believe that if they bring back David Montgomery, that they are not going to utilize him better. But a big portion of that is fixing the offensive line. All right, I had to spend a solid amount of time on running backs because there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. Their age, their contracts, backup running backs. It's the most complicated position to figure out when it comes to dynasty or keeper leagues or any type of long-term league where you're ranking players out over the next 2 to 3 years, because even though a player could be super high, like I said at the beginning of the show, their lifespan in the NFL is less than 3 years. They could show up for a year or two and then completely disappear. So let's go ahead and roll through my top 18 tight ends a little bit quicker. Number 1, Brock Bowers. More than likely getting a new quarterback in Fernando Mendoza. Fernando Mendoza has the capabilities of getting the ball to Brock Bowers on a consistent basis. And as of right now, they don't have any type of an elite wide receiver around Bowers that's going to take a ton of targets. And number 2, Trey McBride. The question mark is, will Kyler Murray be his quarterback next year? Will Kyler Murray be out the door? Do they re-sign Jacoby Brissett? What do they do at the quarterback position in Arizona? A lot of question marks there. Hopefully, whoever the quarterback is gets the ball to Trey McBride. And number 3, Tyler Warren. A fantastic start to the season. However, the Daniel Jones injury killed all of his fantasy value. It'll be interesting to see who they go with next season, because more than likely Daniel Jones won't play next year. And if he does, it'll be late. And number 4, Colston Loveland. I really hope the Chicago Bears get rid of Cole Kmet and really utilize Colston Loveland to the fullest of his ability. They didn't do it to start 2025, but towards the end of the year, he was coming one of the more dominant tight ends in all of football, which after watching him for a couple of seasons at Michigan, absolutely knew the type of receiving threat he was going to be. Get rid of Cole Kmet, get rid of DJ Moore, make Colston Loveland your number 2, make Kyle Monangai the number 1 running back, keep Rome Odunze, and that is going to be a ton of fantasy points for some really good players. Tucker Kraft was killing it before his ACL injury, and hopefully he can get back pretty early next season and ready to go at 100%. And if he does, maybe he's not a top 2 tight end option because he's coming back from the injury, but I don't see why he couldn't be top 5. And number 6, Sam Laporta. The biggest question mark is whether or not he will be ready for the season. After needing back surgery, it could end up taking a little bit longer than what we would like. And if this is any type of a chronic back issue, you gotta wonder if he misses games next season. Jameson Williams was just signed to a new deal. Amon-Ra St. Brown has his deal. Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, other guys are going to have to get new deals here very, very soon. So you got to also keep in mind that Sam Laporta, it's going to be interesting to see how that contract in Detroit works out. Harold Fannin Jr. at number 7, a record-breaking performance while he was in college. Who would have thought that he would be such a good receiving option in the NFL? The good news is that Cleveland utilized him correctly. They didn't try to turn him into Kyle Pitts. They still let him play tight end while splitting him out wide and finding mismatches for him. That is where Harold Fannin will continue to succeed. At number 8, Oronde Gadsden Jr. He exploded onto the scene very early in the season and looked like he was going to be an elite tight end option the rest of the year. And that did not happen. A lot of that had to do with the injuries on the offensive line. But if Keenan Allen hopefully is not back next season, and you've got Quentin Johnston, who's going to have some big games from time to time, the 2 main pass catchers in this offense should easily be Oronde Gadsden Jr. and Ladd McConkey. At number 9, Dalton Kincaid. Injury issues, just not being a high performer all the time. You could find a lot of reasons why Dalton Kincaid really has not lived up to his draft status, and at this point, he might not do it. But Buffalo doesn't have any other wide receivers right now that are true receiving options. Kincaid needs to stay healthy, though. At number 10, Jake Ferguson. I don't think he's going to be a high output performer, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with George Pickens. How much longer does he remain in Dallas? If they don't retain him and Jake Ferguson becomes the number 2 on the team, he could easily be a top 6 option. At number 11, Dallas Goedert. Finding the end zone was really his biggest thing this season. He found the end zone quite often, but he also dealt with some injuries once again as well. Do they move on from A.J. Brown? If they don't, he will continue to be the number 3 option on this team. Number 4 if you count Saquon Barkley as well, and that could lead to a lot of inconsistent performances. At number 12, Brenton Strange. He looked really good at times this season. As he continues to grow with Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to be a guy that can be utilized really well in the red zone. Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas Jr., heck, even Parker Washington at the end of the season makes this a really crowded room for targets, but touchdowns would be his key to fantasy success. At number 13, Kyle Pitts. He's got 1 year left in Atlanta. He's probably gone in free agency after that. Kirk Cousins may be his quarterback next season, but they're also going to have a new offensive coaching staff as well. How is he utilized? There is a lot of questions about Kyle Pitts that as of right now, I can't answer. And I'm not going to take a string of good games in the second half of this past season as, hey, he's definitely a top 12 option. Can't do that. At number 14, Theo Johnson. Once Malik Neighbors is back, you still have Wan'Dale Robinson. Theo Johnson is going to be a really easy target over the middle of the field. And with John Harbaugh as the new coach in New York, he loved himself some Mark Andrews in Baltimore. Maybe Theo Johnson can get on somewhat of the same trajectory. Number 15, Mason Taylor. Whatever the Jets decide to do at the quarterback position, hopefully it's somebody that will utilize Mason Taylor. Honestly, behind Garrett Wilson, he should be the number 2 target on this team, and there is no reason why he shouldn't. At number 16, Pat Freiermuth. Really, for the Muth, I just want him utilized in the red zone more often. You've got DK Metcalf, but then after that, what do you really have? Hopefully the shakeup with the coaching staff and no more Arthur Smith will get Pat Freiermuth back to being a 10-plus touchdown guy every season. At number 17, Juwan Johnson. We saw some really good games from him this past season. He was a big target in this offense. And when you got a guy like Chris Olave as the number 1, but not really a solidified number 2 behind him, Juwan Johnson with Tyler Shuck at quarterback could end up being a really solid option, even if he's not a high option a majority of the time. At number 18, Ben Sinnott. Zach Ertz this past year was really kind of in the way, but after tearing his ACL, his time in the league total might be done at this point. Ben Sinnott is a guy that a second-round pick was used on. He's a big, imposing receiver, and he can block as well. Sinnott, I could see having one of those breakout seasons if Jaden Daniels stays healthy. Headliner Nation, there's my top 24 running backs and top 18 tight ends when it comes to rankings over the next 2 to 3 years. Perfect for those of you in dynasty leagues or keeper leagues, but maybe you're here as a just sole redraft player and you're just interested in knowing who I think is going to have a longer career. Whatever reason you came to this video, interact with it, like it, subscribe, hype the video, whatever it may be. I would greatly appreciate it. But you can also leave a comment down below if you feel like there's someone missing from the rankings that should have been in there. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.